Let's all take a deep breath. You can slowly open your eyes if you like. So, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you all for coming. Warm welcome, and you guys will feel warm. But I think so. Everybody is come to hear him, and I'm so glad everybody here and moment with that.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Neil. So good to be here at Neil and Shweta's home, and good to see some familiar faces and some of you meeting for the first time. My name is Nithya Shanti. You can just call me Nithya. I live in Pune in India, and I used to come to the US every year until the pandemic happened, and then I got to stay at home, as many of us did. And so it's my visiting the US after 2 or 3 years. The session is less about knowledge and more about you.
I don't know that.
Yes, how wonderful. Was that? I think that's Alexa at the back of it. That's fun. Someone was sharing, I think Devyani was sharing with me this, was it on LinkedIn, where it said that the most used words in research are little is known about. And that phrase has been increasing over the years, right? So little is known about. So in fact, that's a good place to begin, that how little we actually know about anything. I used to say that a beginner wants to be an expert wants to be a master, and a master just wants to be a beginner again. Because the more you know, the more you realize how little you know. And so I have been interested in living consciously, and from the age of 16 or so I began meditating. Some of you here have done Vipassana meditation. I began with a 10-day Vipassana meditation course. And I became a teacher for children. I would teach meditation to kids, and also go to prisons and teach both. There are these juvenile prisons for young kids as well as there are full-on prisons, so I teach there as well. It's interesting that the more deeply you're suffering, the more these things make sense. When life is going well, you're not that interested in these things. But when you really find a lot of turmoil in your life, then suddenly you say, I want something, I need something. And then we're more willing to introspect and relook at the things that we've taken for granted. So in that sense, suffering is not always a bad thing. One of my teachers says, suffering is necessary until it's not. So sometimes we do need to, it deepens us a little bit as you go through that. I did not have an obvious suffering in my life, although my father died when I was quite young. But apart from that, I was going along quite well. But I did have questions about how come I learn certain things and I'm not able to practice them. How come my mind is so out of control? How come my mind wanders so much? And that got me interested in meditation, and did a few meditation courses, and I did an MBA, worked in the corporate world for a while. One more thing happened, that after working for a short while, I decided to explore this dimension of life a little deeper. So I left my corporate job and I became a Buddhist monk for a few years. So for about 6 years I was living in a forest tradition. So these are forest monasteries in Thailand and Sri Lanka. And I got to experience a different way of life. Namaste, please come. A different way of life which is based on really being in alignment with the way things are, instead of being in opposition to the way things are. Just today I was listening to a short video, and this person talked about 2 important words from Japan that we can all benefit from. So, in fact, I noted them down so I could share them with you. So the first word, let's say together, oketamo.
Oketamo.
Let's say it one more time.
Oketamo.
And the second one is arigato.
Arigato.
So oketamo means to accept with an open heart. So whatever happens in your life, oketamo, to accept with an open heart. And they have these retreats in Japan where usually only Japanese people do this, but recently they've opened it up to other people as well. And you go and spend a few weeks with the teacher, and whatever the teacher makes you do, you're supposed to bow down and do it. So for example, he'll say, go sit under that cold waterfall. Certainly not pleasant sitting under a cold waterfall. So what will you say? Okitama. Okitama means I accept with an open heart. And you go and sit under the cold waterfall. Or they'll say, you have to walk 40 kilometers today. Okitama. And why are they saying okitama to these things? Because in life, inevitably, you will have certain things you don't like. Life, inevitably, you will have certain things that are not in your control. And if you're always used to getting things your way, then you're going to suffer quite a bit. So when things are not in your hands, then you say, okitama. Okitama means I accept with an open heart. This is the way it is right now. If it is in your power to change, by all means change it. But not everything is in our power to change. So once in a while, we have to learn to be open and accept. There's a famous teacher in the US, Eckhart Tolle. He wrote a book called Power of Now. And he says, if you're in the now, there are these three things. You're either in this, this, or this. These three things. What are the three things? Let's say together. Acceptance, enjoyment, enthusiasm. So at the very basic level, you have to be at acceptance. If not acceptance, you be in enjoyment. In fact, anything you enjoy, one of the reasons you enjoy it is you're more present. Maybe you enjoy sports, maybe you enjoy hiking, maybe you enjoy music, maybe you enjoy dancing. Whatever you enjoy for the creative pursuit, whatever you enjoy, chances are you're more present. The more present you are today in this gathering, the more you'll enjoy it. The more your mind's all over the place, you'll not enjoy it. They're the feature of enjoyment that's connected to being present. And enthusiasm, which is very interesting. Once in a while, an idea comes to you, a mission comes to you, and it grips you. And it's happened to me, it may have happened to some of you, where you're thinking it, you're dreaming it, you're breathing it. And it could happen in your business, it could happen in your relationships, it could happen in your work, it could happen in your hobbies. But it just takes you over. You're filled with a kind of new energy, a new spirit. And it just picks you up, and a huge new energy, huge surge of inspiration comes, and that's called enthusiasm. We'd love to be enthusiastic all the time, but that becomes a little fake. So you'll end up usually going between these three states. What are the three states again? Acceptance, enjoyment, and enthusiasm. So at the very least, we can say okitama, which means I accept with an open heart. If you can't say that, then you start suffering, because you start, Byron Katie, one of my teachers, says, you argue with reality. I shouldn't be this way, you shouldn't be this way, life shouldn't be this way. But it is this way sometimes. What do you do? I love this little story which was told to me many years back about this man who's been traveling to another city, and he's coming back to his hometown, and from a distance he sees a lot of smoke in the sky. He's wondering what's going on. As he comes closer, his heart starts beating. The smoke is coming from his area of town. As he goes even closer, he can't believe it. His own house is on fire, and he's shocked. His beautiful house is on fire. Luckily, the family's outside, and people are trying to put the fire out. But already now, most of the house is damaged. So he's very distraught, he's very unhappy. And his son comes to him and says, Father, don't worry, everything's okay. What do you mean everything's okay? Our house is burning. He says, Father, you may not understand this or accept it, but while you were traveling, somebody offered us a wonderful price for our house. And I couldn't reach you, so I agreed. So our house has been sold. Really? Our house has been sold? So suddenly he relaxes. Oh, someone's house is burning. Because the house has been sold. Then a second son comes and says, Father, how come you're looking so relaxed? He says, can't you see our house is burning? But it's been, can't you see our house is burning? So the father says, yeah, but your brother sold it. He said, he sold it, but the man hasn't given the money yet. Oh no, he hasn't given the money yet. So again, he gets very distraught. Oh my goodness, the house is burning, our house is burning. The third son comes and says, Father, relax, everything's fine. How can everything be fine? Our house is burning. He says, no, actually the man, I told him what's happened. And he said, actually, to be honest with you, I didn't want your house. I wanted the land. So I was going to demolish it anyway. So I'll not take advantage of your misery. I will pay you whatever we agreed on. And we'll go ahead with the deal. And again, he relaxes. So in a period of a few minutes, you see how quickly it changed. Someone's house was burning, then my house was burning, then someone's house was burning, then my house was burning, then someone's house was burning. And each time, his inner state changed. This is a very important insight. We think we react to the events of our life. We don't. So please say with me, we react to our thoughts about the events of our life. So one of the most important skills we learn in this lifetime is the skill of being a master storyteller. How do you tell the story of what's happening? What was that movie in the US which became very popular? I think it's a Beautiful World, I think it's called. Where this man pretends to his son that the entire World War II invasion and the going to the concentration camp is one big play act. It's like one big game, right? And literally convinces his son that being taken into a concentration camp is like a game. I think it's called It's a Beautiful World. It's a Beautiful Life. It's a Beautiful Life. That's a beautiful movie. And that's a fantastic example of the power of a story that you can tell. If you tell a different story, you have a different experience. Right? So as you question the stories you're telling about yourself, the stories you're telling about the people around you and your life itself, your entire experience changes. A man was walking down a road and he saw someone breaking some stone. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Can't you see I'm breaking stone? Leave me alone." So he walks a little further. Another person is breaking stone. He said, "What are you doing?" So he smiles and says, I'm breaking stone to build a house for my family." Great. So he goes further. Another person is breaking stone. He said, "What are you doing?" And this person has a glow on his face. He says, "We're building a church here." They were all doing the same activity, but they had a different meaning behind it. One was doing it like a job, the other was doing it like a duty, and the other was doing it because it was a calling. It's not what you do, it's why you do it. That makes all the difference. And the why is a story that you tell. So when we change our way of looking at things, the things we look at change. In India, this is called, say with me, Yatha Drishti
Yatha Drishti
Tatha Shrishti.
Tatha Srishti.
Say it one more time. Drishti Tatha. When I change my way of looking at things, the things I look at change. In other words, I'm not looking at life the way it is. I'm looking at life as a reflection of my own perception. And we can get infinitely creative with this. In fact, if you look at stories that inspire you, typically the person has thought or done something that is very unexpected. Wow, really? Could they, in that situation, could they think like that? Could they speak like that? Could they behave like that? How is that possible? And it completely challenges us. How is that even possible? Because they saw things in a different way. And that challenges us to also upgrade our way of looking at things. So for this, we have to become a little bit more attentive to our own life. In fact, the best book you'll ever read is not Facebook. The best book you'll ever read is a book of your own life. If you look at your own reactions to the day, where do you get, in your day, in your average day, where do you tend to get irritated? Where do you tend to get anxious? Where do you tend to get worried? There's some thinking behind that. You start questioning, is this the only way I can look at this? Or are there other ways of looking at this? Some years back, I saw a TED Talk about this man who's a professional storyteller. And he told the story of his father who owned the bank in the local town. And his father did not come from a very rich family. And to cut the long story short, his father had a limp. Wherever he'd walk, he had a limp. And he never told the son the reason for the limp. But this one day, he tells the story. He tells his son the story. The story is that as a young boy, his father and his brothers, they were cutting wood. And as a little boy, he also wanted to cut. But the parents said no, the father said no, it's too sharp, the axe is too sharp, leave it. Then the mother called everyone for lunch, so they all went. The axe was there, no one was looking. So he took the axe and he went to cut the wood, but because he's a small kid, he doesn't know what he's doing, he actually completely misses the wood and the axe goes and lodges itself in its knee. And of course he screams, everyone comes running. This is a small town, there's no hospital nearby. So the story is about how his father makes a great effort of, he gives some brandy or something to numb the pain a bit. And he has to get into a train and go to the closest hospital. It takes hours to get his son there. And his son is literally on the brink of death. And how as a result, the surgery is done and his leg is saved. But then ever since he's had a limp in his leg. Now, what his mother did was, his father's mother, grandmother, his grandmother did was every night at the dinner table, she told the son, tell us what happened that day. He said, I don't want to tell you what happened that day. No, tell us what happened that day. Tell it from your perspective. Tell it from my perspective. Tell it from your father's perspective. Tell it from the doctor's perspective. Tell it from your brother and sister's perspective. Tell the same story from a different perspective. And each time you tell it from a different perspective, the story changes a bit. And over a period of a few months, it went from being this terrible thing that had happened to him to just a story which can be seen from so many different perspectives. And he began to see the good things that came out of that. Like for his brothers would go out and work on the fields, but because he couldn't go out, he had to stay home, and so he would read. So he became the most educated person in the family. and he became really sharp at mathematics and things like that. He got good at accounting. He got a job at the local bank, and over several years, he actually was able to buy out the bank. And so he became one of the richest people in that community. And that's what inspired this young boy to become a professional storyteller. He realized the power of stories. So what's actually limiting us is not the circumstances of our life. What's limiting us is the way we're looking at it and the stories that we tell. When you change your way of looking at things, the things you look at change. So these two nice Japanese words. The first one is, what is the first word? Okitamu. And the second one is, say with me, arigato. Arigato means thank you. I was with some Japanese people years back, and this person said that in Japan we have a belief. If you say thank you 1 million times, your life will change forever. No, in fact, he said the world will change forever. I said, how can the world change from my saying thank you 1 million times? What's the connection? And I thought about it deeply. I said, yeah, it makes sense, because actually I'm not seeing the world. I'm seeing my thoughts about the world. If you think the world is in a very bad state, you're right. And if you think the world, you ain't seen nothing yet, the best is yet to come, again, you're right. It's how you're looking at it. You're not seeing the world the way it is, you're seeing it the way you are. One of the reasons I left my monastic life was there was a fixation on seeing the world the way it used to be. In the Buddha's time, how it was back then. And they were quite out of touch with the way it is. And they were not really interested in the younger generation, what they need. And I felt this was a disconnect. And I felt it was important for us to not just see the world the way it was, but be open to the possibilities of what is to come up ahead as well. So there's a little game we'll play right now. This game is called, say with me, Oh No, How Wonderful. It's a very simple game, and you can play it at home as well. I'm going to give you some oh no situations. Oh no, and then you are supposed to tell me what's wonderful about that in every situation. Oh no, the kids' room is in a mess. So first of all, you all say how wonderful.
How wonderful.
What's wonderful about that?
They had a good time.
They had a good time. They've been having a good time, right?
Now they'll learn how to clean it.
They learn how to clean it, right? How else will they learn? Okay. Now in India, when I said the same thing, one person said, "How wonderful they have a room." Not everyone's got a room for their kids. Somebody else said, "Oh, how wonderful you have kids," right? You see how many things that built into that? You have kids. They have a room. They have a lot of things to play with. They're very energetic kids. There are a lot of wonderful things built into that. So let's try another one. So I'll give you the situation. You're supposed to say how wonderful, right? So the situation is, oh no, we're stuck in traffic. What will you say?
How wonderful.
What's wonderful about that? Listen to music, all right. What else? We're in a nice car, yeah. What else? AC is on, maybe, yeah. We're in a great city.
We're going somewhere.
We're going somewhere, all right.
We are together.
We are together, right? So there's so many things built into that. In every situation, oh no, how wonderful. Oh no, how wonderful. You get a big electricity bill. What do you call electricity bill here? What do you call power bill? Yeah, so you got a really big bill this month. What do you say?
Oh no.
You say how wonderful. I'll say you say how wonderful.
I will say oh no.
You say oh no. So what's wonderful about getting a big bill?
We party a lot.
We party a lot. Huh? We have a home. Yeah, we have a home. There's a TV in every room. There's something charging on every port, right? And so, and you have electricity. In fact, I was teaching in Sikkim in India, and I said the same example. So they loudly said, how wonderful. I said, what's wonderful? They said, here there are a lot of power cuts. So if you get a big bill, very happy with it. This month we got a lot of power, so we got a bigger bill. So simple things like that, which we take for granted, they start emerging when you play this game. You get parking, you go for a movie, but you get parking really far away. What do you say? What's wonderful about that?
I can get more steps.
You get to walk more. And typically, if you get parking very close to the place, on the way out, you're going to get stuck because all the cars are going to jam, right? But you're further away, you'll get out fast. So in every situation, what's wonderful, what's wonderful, what's wonderful. And when people play this game, little by little, they get very good at this. I had a friend who called me, suddenly said, Nithya, how wonderful. I said, what happened? He said, I missed my flight. I said, what happened? He said, no, it's wonderful. You taught me to say how wonderful. And instead of getting upset about it, I said, all right, I missed the flight. But now what can I make of this time, right? So I'm lucky there's another flight in a few hours, and I'll still make it to my destination in time. And meanwhile, I can spend time here. I can look at the airport, and I can reply to my emails. And I'm changing my way of thinking to say how wonderful, how wonderful, how wonderful. Yatha drishti, tatha shrishti. When you change your way of looking at things, the things you look at change. We are not seeing the world the way it is, we are seeing the world the way we are. It's a very powerful thing to learn. What I've learned in my years of practice is essentially these are two things. One is being a master storyteller, and the other is being attentive. So please say with me, the quality of my life is the quality of the stories I tell and where I'm directing my attention. Have you seen that even in a beautiful place like California and in this wonderful Bay Area, you can be living in a beautiful home, you can have a lovely family, and you can still be very unhappy. It's because where you're focusing, You're focusing, oh, someone's zooming ahead in their career ahead of me. Oh, their kids are like that, our kids are like this. Oh, we have this family problem, they don't. Oh, we have this health problem, they don't. And so you can have it all and you can still be very unhappy because your mind is unruly. Where do you focus your attention in every situation? One phrase I learned from my teacher, he said that there are two kinds of people. There are worriers and there are warriors. Worriers keep their prayer is, no more troubles, please, no more troubles, please, please. The only reason they pray is, no more troubles, please, no more troubles, please. And the warriors say something very interesting. Say with me, bring it on. Some people are even afraid of saying it. Because when you say that, it's like you don't know what's going to happen. But the idea of bring it on is, whenever you welcome something, it's not a problem. Whatever you resist will persist. What you welcome is not a problem. I had an experience where quite early in my journey as a monk, we were walking for 5 days continuously. We were walking through dense forest. We were actually living in the forest. We were walking to a monastery which is deep in the forest. And I was quite new, so I had actually just become, it's called anagarika, someone who wears white robes. You've come into training, you're not a monk yet. And so all the other monks were very normal, we have these Hawaii chappals in India, these rubber flip-flops. But I said, no, I need to get proper, thicker sole, and we're going through a forest. So I spent some money, I had money back. As a monk, actually, you don't use money. But just before you enter that, you are allowed to use some money. So I used my extra money to buy a very thick, solid pair of slippers. But trying to be extra smart got me in trouble because those slippers began cutting into my toe. So already on the second day, I was in pain. And on the third day, it was fully swollen and it was in a lot of pain. But what do? You have to keep going because there are so many people walking. You have to just keep walking. Every step was painful. And I realized that if I keep thinking, there are 2 more days to go, there are 2 more days to go, there are 2 more days to go, then my suffering would get multiplied. In fact, there's a nice distinction between pain and suffering. Please say with me, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. So suffering is the extra mental layer we add to what's going on. So I said, how can I switch? How can I change this now? How can I reduce my suffering? A lot of suffering here. Whenever the phone rings, you'll all say with me, how wonderful. So what I did was, I'd heard of this ancient Tibetan practice where whenever you have any pain, you think to yourself that since suppose you have toothache, or suppose you have stomachache, or suppose you have backache, you think to yourself, I'm not the only one in the world with a toothache, with a stomachache, with a backache. There are countless other people in the world with this kind of pain. So since I have it anyway, may they all be released from the pain. May all other beings be released from that tooth pain, or that stomach pain, or that back pain, or whatever pain you have. So in other words, you give a meaning to your experience. So I said, all right, since I have pain in my leg anyway, I might as well give a meaning to it. So the meaning I gave to it is, whoever else in this world has pain in their leg, may they be freed from the pain in the leg. Let me be the one let me be the only one with the pain in my leg. What I noticed was, the pain didn't change, but the suffering vanished. And I was able to walk for the next 2 days, step by step by step, through that dense forest. And I was amazed how this worked. That literally, when I gave a meaning to my pain, like for example, I take a needle, right? And I walk around this group and I start just jabbing all of you with a needle. Would you like that? Yes or no? No. Quite clear, right? You wouldn't like it. In fact, you might get very upset with me. What are you doing? What's wrong with you? Why are you jabbing with a needle? What have I done? But then suddenly my whole my whole apparel changes, and I look like either a doctor or a nurse, right? And I say, excuse me, blood test, okay, sure, or blood donation, and suddenly that jab is now very meaningful. You don't mind giving that jab because now I've given you a meaning. This is a test. There's a reason for this, and we actually are even thankful. You'll maybe even pay me for it. It's not the experience; it's your thoughts about the experience. When something is meaningless, it creates suffering. When something is meaningful, there's no suffering. Maybe you would not choose to sit out in the open on a day like this where it's quite sunny. Maybe that if I force you to sit like this, it can become suffering. Like, why are you forcing me to sit like this? I'd rather be indoors. But because we're here and there is some meaning to this activity, it's not so much suffering. Maybe it's a little painful, but it's not suffering. And so again, the art of being a master storyteller. Where are you focusing your attention? So that was a very powerful experience for me, where I realized that any experience that I can give a meaning to, it releases the suffering around it. 3 good places to direct our attention. So please say with me. Attention to what's right. This is called gratitude, right? So in any situation, what's going right? What's good with me? What's good with you? What's good with us? There's a game I play, it's called the awesomeness game. So you can do it with your family or with your friends. And you start with the hardest one actually, which is, what's awesome about me? You start with yourself. What's awesome about yourself? Because the hardest one is, for many of us, is to appreciate what's good about us. And sometimes I've even seen people, they struggle to say the word awesome about themselves. There's nothing awesome about me. Which means you've been too judgmental of yourself. So what's awesome about yourself? So everyone in the family says what's awesome about themselves. What's good about me, what's amazing about me, what's awesome about me. And then after a while, what's awesome about you? So you tell your spouse, your kids, you tell each other what's awesome about you. And by the way, when you say that, the other person will say, how wonderful. You're not allowed to say, no, I'm not like that, right? But that's another problem. First of all, we crave appreciation. When you get it, no, I'm not like that. So this is very strange. So when you're getting appreciation, receive it. Bring it on. In fact, when people appreciate me, I often say, tell me more. Why? Because I've learned over the years that when people appreciate me, it's got nothing to do with me. It's actually because you can just as easily criticize me. When you criticize me, something I'm thinking, saying, or doing is not matching who you think I should be. And when you're appreciating me, something I'm thinking, saying, or doing is matching, and you have approval for it, actually it's all about you. So when you appreciate me, you're in a good state. So bring it on. Tell me more. Let us allow you to remain in that good state a little longer. So what's awesome about me? What's awesome about you? What's awesome about us as a family, as a group, as a community? What's awesome about life? One of my teachers told me that if you can, just say it with me, 10 seconds every minute for 2 hours, focus on what's awesome, I will change my life forever. And there's a truth in that. Just like that Japanese thing, that if you are able to say thank you 1,000,000 times, the world changes forever. How does the world change forever? Your way of looking at the world changes forever. So similarly, if you were to say thank you and be appreciative, be in the state of awesome, what's awesome about me, what's awesome about you, what's awesome about us, what's awesome about life, for just 2 hours, we underestimate how powerful that is. Have you noticed this? That most of us, when we appreciate, we'll say 1 sentence, 2 sentences, 3 sentences. Well done, good job, that was so good, proud of you. But when we don't like something, then there's no limit to it. Then we go on and on and on. 5 minutes is too little, 10 minutes is too little, 1 hour is too little. We can just go on and on and on. We don't even notice how long we go on. But when it comes to appreciating, we put a full stop. Right? It's called a period in the US. Stop. So why is it like that? Why can't we flip that around? What if we do it the other way around? Why can't we reduce our criticism to short and increase what we appreciate? I do this with my friends on their birthdays, that we sit around and we play the awesomeness game. What's awesome about you? And we go on and on and on. And this is the best kind of brainwashing. It literally washes your brain. And I've done this so many times. Usually when I go to a family's, I'm staying with Neil, we haven't done it with you yet. But usually when I do this, I get the family to play this game together. And every single time, the one comment I get is, why don't we do this more often? We know these things, we just don't tell each other. We just keep it in our heads. What we tell each other is transactional stuff, and what we tell each other, things we don't like. And we neglect telling each other things we do love and we do appreciate about each other. And typically someone's eyes gets wet in that process. As we open our hearts and we tell each other what we love, appreciate, and also the potential we see in each other. Many of you here are parents, and I believe there are 3 things as a parent you need to cultivate. 3 qualities you have to cultivate as a parent. So please say with me. The ability to accept my child exactly the way he or she is. One of the problems in our education system is constant comparison. It's getting better a little bit in the US, but in many places in the world, it's constant comparison. But actually, not everyone is the same. And also, school is testing only a few things, few measures of memorization, rationalization, reasoning. But there are many, many qualities. We have artistic qualities, we have creative qualities. Not all of it gets tested in a school environment. So as a parent, your job is to love and appreciate and accept your child exactly the way he or she is. And not compare them even to their sibling, and not compare them certainly to any other kid. I love and accept you the way you are. Second quality, let's say together, the ability to see a greater potential and a genius in this child, even if he or she can't see it in themselves. See, you have more life experience, you've traveled the world, you've seen all kinds of things. So now you have to challenge yourself, what is the genius of this child? And maybe you don't know it yet, but then you tell yourself, it's going to come. There is some genius, some amazing ability that's going to emerge in these kids. There's a story that Rose Kennedy, the mother of all the Kennedy kids, at breakfast she would tell them, now kids, behave yourself. For one day you will all be world leaders. Every breakfast. And many of them actually became world leaders. Although many of them got assassinated as well. So maybe that's not the best. Maybe that's not the best thing to tell your kids, right? So what I would tell your kids is that there is a genius in you. There is something that is remarkable in you, and you are here to express that on your own terms. It may not match what your parents are doing, but it'll be on your own terms. And the third thing is, let's say together, never, never, never give up. So don't give up on your kids. If you do these 3 things, I think you have fulfilled your duty as parents. You have accepted your child the way he or she is. You've seen in them a greater potential, greater genius. And that's a creative tension right there. Because the first one is about support, I accept you. The second one is a challenge. There's more, you have a greater ability than this. You're more than you think you are. The more than you're pretending to be. That's a challenge. And this is a creative tension. And if you never, never, never give up, then transformation has to happen. Your kids will rise up to meet that. We grow on the border of support and challenge. Look back in your life. Was it a parent? Was it a teacher? Was it a friend? Was it a grandparent? Was it somebody else? Maybe someone at work. You grew maximum when they supported you and they challenged you. If they only support you, you get complacent. If they only challenge you, you get burnt out. But when they both support and challenge you, your favorite bosses would not have been always the most pleasant bosses. But you knew that deep down they wanted the best for you. And that deep down they saw something in you. Right? So this is also true for our teachers. So our job as parents, as teachers, as friends, as leaders, is to support and challenge. And when we do this, magic happens, transformation happens. The greatest support we can give ourselves is to accept ourselves exactly the way we are. This is a society built on constant comparisons at every level. At the level of how you look, at the level of what you have, what you've achieved, and by what age you've achieved it, and what you can do about it. And especially, in fact, someone told me in California, the most stressful thing people ask each other is, so, what are you doing these days? Because someone's starting a company, someone's selling a company, someone's, so simple statement like, so what are you doing these days? You can't just say, oh, I was just sitting at home. I was just making breakfast. You're supposed to be doing something really cool, right? So this is a place where so much is happening, where you can always feel like you're getting left behind, because such a lot is happening all the time. And yet, we should remember that life is not just about doing. There's a famous story which you probably all heard of. I'll shorten the story a bit. This American professor goes to a small village, fishing town in Mexico, and he sees this fisherman relaxing on the beach. So he says, what are you doing? He says, I'm relaxing. He says, why are you relaxing? There are fish out there. Why don't you go out and fish some more? He said, no, I've already gone in the morning. I've done my fishing. He said, but you have your boat, you have your net. Go out again. Why should I go out again? He said, no, when you go out again, you'll catch more fish. And then what will happen? Then if you have more fish, you can earn more money. Then what will happen? Then you can hire some more people. Then what will happen? Then you can buy your own boat. Then you can buy multiple boats. Then what will happen? Then you can start a fishing company. Then what will happen? Then you can have shares. You can float the shares in the stock market. Then what will happen? Then after a few years, you can sell the shares. You'll become a multi-millionaire. Then what will happen? Then you can come back home and you can spend time with your kids and you can relax on the beach. But that's what I'm doing. I'm relaxing. I'm relaxing on the beach. So at the end of it, actually, what we want is simple things. And we make it so complicated for ourselves. We imagine we have to do so many things before we can do that. It's interesting in India, I don't know about the US, but in India, when you buy property, you're not called an owner. You're called an occupant. I find that fascinating. You can't own land. In fact, did you know that one of the reasons the Native Americans were very confused when the Western people came and said, can we buy this land? Who owns this land? They had no concept of buying land. Like, we don't have a concept of buying the sky. Maybe we do, I don't know, nowadays. But you can't really buy the sky. Sky is just a sky, right? But this idea of buying land was completely alien to the native people. So when they said, who owns it? They said, nobody owns it. They said, okay, right over here that nobody owns it, then we'll take it. So like that's why they were displaced from their own land. Because nobody owns the land. You can't own the land. And you can just occupy land. And if you're very honest, how much land can you occupy? The amount you're sitting on right now. Everything else is all convention, what do you say, conceptual, right? You own this house, but actually, who owns what, right? You just the amount of land you're occupying is literally the amount you're sitting on right now. That's the amount of land you can occupy. And then you could have 1,000 acres, but that's just in your mind, actually. The saints of India were asked, how come you're so contented? How come you have such few belongings and you hardly have anything? When you're so happy, you're so contented, how come? We seem to be accumulating, but we still don't have enough. And a very interesting response came that I used to think I am this body and I am this mind. And so I always had a sense of wanting to acquire more. But then as wisdom blossomed, I realized my body is this entire universe. Now just try that for a moment. Try that thought for a moment. If you think your body is the entire universe and your mind is all minds, when was the last time in your resolution, New Year resolutions or your list of goals, you said, I'd like to have an extra heart. I'd like to have an extra liver. I'd like to have an extra stomach. I'd like to have extra fingers. I'd like to have an extra leg. No one says those things. Why? I've already got enough legs, I've got enough hearts, I've got enough fingers. Nobody asked for an extra organ. Why? Because I already have it. You only ask for what you imagine you don't have. And who taught you that? That I don't have this and I don't have that. It's fascinating. So in India, there are two directions we go with this. One is called, say with me, Neti Neti. And the other is called Iti Iti. What does it mean, Neti Neti? Neti Neti means not this, not this, not this. So it's in the direction of, I'm not this. Anything you say about me, in some sense, I'm not that. If you say I'm generous, I'm not always generous. Sometimes I can be quite selfish. If you say I'm selfish, I'm not always selfish. Sometimes I can be quite open-hearted. If you say I'm wise, maybe in some ways, but not in other ways. Anything you say about me, in some ways I'm that, but I'm not always that. So as you go deeper and deeper, you start realizing I'm not just my name, because my parents can call me by a different name. My friends can call me by a different name. I'm not just my qualifications. Because if I'm a doctor in India, in the US, they don't accept that as being a doctor. I'm not a doctor in the US. I'm not a doctor in all places, right? If I'm a doctor of this, I'm not a doctor of that. If I know this, then in some context, I don't know enough of that. I don't know that deeply enough. So like this, you shed, not this, not this, not this. And you actually come to a place of, you can't describe who you are. When you touch that place of, I can't even describe who I am, then suddenly there's a kind of affinity with all things. It's like you see a little bit of yourself in everything. But for that, you have to become like a zero. You first become zero, and the zero goes through a twist, and that becomes infinity. So the fascinating thing is, I am nothing, and then from that I am nothing, I am everything. So it is totally valid and normal to sometimes feel I'm not enough, but just go all the way with that and realize I'm nothing. And it's totally valid to think I need more, I want more, I want to be ambitious, fantastic, but just go all the way with that and realize I will not be satisfied until I have everything and I realize I am everything. And that's a little game we can play with ourselves. I'm nothing, and I'm everything, and I'm something simultaneously. If you only think you're nothing, that's not good enough. If you only think you're everything, that's not good enough. If you only think you are something, that's not good enough. Simultaneously nothing, everything, and something. And this is wisdom. This is living in a world full of stories and fluidly moving from one role to another, from one story to another. You're fluidly changing and adapting to whatever's coming up in your life. And it's not creating so much friction in your life. The reason I do these kinds of sessions is to give people some taste of, please say with me, freedom, and ease. In all circumstances of your life, I believe there is freedom and ease that is available. It is available, it is not always accessible, but it is available. And the more you grow in wisdom, you'll realize it also starts becoming accessible. My teacher Byron Katie had a friend who had made her promise that never lie to me. Never lie to me. Tell me things the way you see them. This friend got cancer. Her leg was swollen with cancer. And she calls Katie to the room and she's complaining about how bad the leg is and how much it's hurting and how bad the doctors aren't doing a good job. And she's complaining for half an hour. And Katie doesn't say anything. So she says, say something. So Katie says, I don't see a problem. You don't see a problem? So she lifts her bed cover. Her right leg is swollen with cancer. You don't see a problem? So Katie said, now I see the problem. You want your right leg to look like your left leg. That's the problem. And her friend bursts out laughing. She says, oh my, you're right. That is the way it is. And it shouldn't be like this, it shouldn't be like this, but it is the way it is. But it shouldn't be like this, but it is the way it is. When you argue with reality, you lose 100% of the time. Acceptance. This is a word that's used too often and misunderstood too much. It is the ground floor of every kind of healing in your life. You accept things the way they are, no matter how painful they are, no matter how difficult they are, no matter how unpleasant they are. It is the way it is. I had a relative in the US. This lady had cancer for over 20 years. But one of the most positive, bubbly, energetic people I've ever met, right? And she was convinced that she had a lot of faith in reincarnation. She said, I'm going to come back again in a fresh body. This is getting old now, nothing to worry about. So what was amazing about her was, in every situation, she would focus on what she can do and not what she couldn't do. And one of her favorite phrases is, it is the way it is. It is what it is. She would always say this. So she had advanced throat cancer. Cancer got worse and worse and worse. And to a point where she couldn't speak anymore. But she never was complaining. And the last day of her life, I was told, I was not there in the US at the time, but I was told, everyone came up to her. She squeezed everyone's hand tightly. And she winked at them. She couldn't speak anymore, but she winked at them. Like, I'll be back. And I find this is remarkable, right? That you can live your life with grace and you can move on also with grace. We need more examples of this. I've been a monk for long enough to see some really exceptional deaths, and it's made me less afraid of death. Because I've seen people live gracefully and pass on gracefully. Almost like a ripe fruit, at the right time just detaches itself. A leaf that's withering at the right point just detaches itself, just floats down to the ground in a very graceful way. It's possible to be like that. It's possible to live like that. It's possible to say goodbye like that. One of my teachers, my meditation teachers, she'd gone, some of you here have done Vipassana meditation. So there is, all day you meditate. And one of the last meditations of the evening, you have a short gap before there's a talk by the teacher. So these are called strong determination, adittan sitting. So there's an interesting, you can sit down any position you like. Close your eyes. And for 1 full hour, you're not supposed to open your eyes, you're not supposed to open your hands, you're not supposed to open your legs. And the teacher tells you, you've already done this. In your mother's womb, you did it for 9 months. For 9 months, you couldn't open your eyes, you couldn't open your legs, you couldn't open your hands. You did it for 9 months, I do it for 1 hour. And people struggle. That 1 hour is very painful. 1 hour to just sit without moving. 1 hour is not that long, but in your mind, it becomes very long. Anyway, this lady had been one of the first Indian women to become a doctor, actually. She was in her 80s at the time. And when the 1 hour finishes, then they have a beautiful, the teacher says something very beautiful. He says, Bhavatu Sabba Mangalam, Bhavatu Sabba Mangalam, Bhavatu Sarva Mangalam 3 times, which means may all beings be happy and well. And the response the group gives is sadhu, 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 which means may it be so, may it be so, may it be so. Now this particular time, this lady said it very, very slowly, sadhu, very long, sadhu, and then she bowed down. And everyone got up and left to take a refreshment. And they came back 10 minutes, she's still bowing down. So somebody goes to check on her, are you all right? She'd passed away. What a way to pass away. She sat through that last meditation. She said sadhu, sadhu, sadhu 3 times to what her teacher said. She put her head down, and that's how she passed away. That's just one example. I've seen so many examples of people having remarkable passages. And this gives me confidence that it's important for us. How we live is important. How we think is important. What we say and do is important. Even in her old age, she'd already kind of stopped being a medical doctor, but she would look, this thing that some children have, it's called a cleft lip. They're born in a condition where there's a kind of a cut in their lip and their upper palate. And it's treatable now. It's a surgery that can be done. But for many people in India, it's quite expensive. They can't handle it. So even in her late years, she would be constantly fundraising to find children with cleft lip, and then she would do the surgery for them, and she'd have them. But their entire life can get affected if you don't do it when they're young. Right? So that kind of compassion, that kind of spirit, it made her life very fluid, and it made her death also very fluid. How can you and I live more fluid lives with more freedom, more grace, and more ease? There's no one set way to do this, but it's an intention. And as you make that intention, if I've made my intention that I want to live a life of more fluidity, more grace, more ease, more joy, then it tends to be like that. Then I make my decisions based on that. Instead of being influenced by other people of how I should be living, what I should be doing. Hindi mein kehte hain, I don't know how many of you know Hindi here, but say with me, sabse bada rog, kya kahenge log? The biggest disease of all is what will people say, what will people say, what will people say. And then there's a Hindi movie which says, kuch to log kahenge. Logon ka kaam hai kehna. So something or the other people are going to say things. That's what people do. They say things. And we shouldn't limit ourselves by what we imagine people will say. It took a certain amount, I don't think the word courage is appropriate, but it took a certain amount of gumption on my part. I had just begun working. And quite early in my corporate career, I said, okay, this is not fitting. This is not right. And I want to become a monk. And in India, in Buddhism, you can't just become a monk unless your parents give permission. So it took me 3 months to just sit at home. And my parents kept saying, okay, try another job, try this, try that. What's your problem? And finally, they said, okay, looks like you really want to do this. Go ahead and do it. All right. So they grudgingly gave permission. But it took a little bit of gumption to let go of a secure job and, secure salary and secure everything. And then go into a completely different world. I went to Thailand. I went to a totally different culture. They don't speak English much over there. I went to a monastery, which was all people I didn't know over there. And I spent 2 years, 2.5 years in Thailand. And then 3.5 years in Sri Lanka. Completely different culture. I'm not Buddhist by birth. I don't have that kind of training. But it opened me up to a different way of thinking. A different language, a different culture. And when you do that, and some of you have traveled, you know this. When you go to a different culture, you realize some of the things you take for granted, other people don't take for granted. They have a different way of thinking. It opens your mind that there are other ways of living than we imagine. So one of the best things you can do is once in a while, pluck yourself out of your familiar environment and put yourself in a very unfamiliar, very different environment. Some of your assumptions will be challenged. Some of your beliefs will be challenged. That was very helpful for me. And I've done that over and over again in my life. In fact, I don't even consider myself Buddhist anymore. Because I said the Buddha wasn't Buddhist. And I don't think Jesus was Christian. I don't think Guru Nanak was Sikh. These are things that we invent later on. They were being true to their heart. They were being true to themselves. They were expressing their spirit. And they were responding to the people around them in the best way that they knew how. It was a kind of active love, active compassion, active wisdom. It was very, very relevant to each situation. There's a lovely story of the Buddha. He's walking with his disciple, that's like his cousin who becomes his disciple, Ananda. And they're walking and see they see a sick monk. He's very sick. And the other monks, they just left him in the corner. They said, what's wrong? He said, he's got pus coming out of his body. He's smelly, he's stinky. He said, yeah, but he's sick. So the Buddha himself goes and he calls for some cloth and some warm water. And the Buddha himself, along with Ananda, they take care of the monk, they wipe his sores, they clean his sores. And the Buddha says to the monk, listen, now you don't have mother, father, brother, sister. You are only there for each other. So from now on, whenever a monk is sick, you should think that I am sick, and how would you take care of me? So in our tradition, now this is a very subtle but interesting point. Most people, when they get sick, they start feeling guilty. Oh my goodness, especially in the US. Oh, inconvenience, I'm inconveniencing everybody in the family. Oh, now other people have to change their schedule. I can't make breakfast for them, I can't do this. There's sickness plus there's guilt. And what I learned in Buddhism, for example, is that you don't get guilty when you're sick. It's an opportunity for others to practice compassion. So yes, it was disruptive. When a monk got sick, we had to stop doing what we were doing and take care of this monk. So good break from meditation. And we would say, thank you, you're giving us a chance to take care of the Buddha himself. You see, so you take out the whole guilt element. It is natural for us sometimes in life. We will not be so well, and we can depend on each other to support each other. There was, I'm forgetting the name of the author, but she said, this was a lady who studied human society, human culture, history. And she says, civilization. What would you think is the first marker of civilization? Is it a piece of broken pottery? Is it some mummified remains? What do you think is the first indicator of culture and civilization and humanity? So she says it is a, what is this bone called? Is it a femur? She says it is a healed femur bone. Why that? Because the femur bone, when it breaks, it takes a long time to heal. So if you find a skeleton of someone thousands of years ago and their femur bone is clearly had a fracture and it's healed, that's the beginning of civilization. Why? Because people decided to stick with this person for months together, feed them and take care of them when they didn't have to. They could have abandoned them and said, okay, too bad, deal with it. You're dead. But we decided to stick it out and even endanger ourselves to some extent to take care of this one person who was sick. So you got to be there for each other. And that makes all the difference. One of the markers of how long you will live, there are 2-3 markers. One marker is how, like for example, can you pick up the phone right now and call someone and ask for money? That's a good one, because not everyone, they'll all be friends until you ask for money. How many people can you pick up the phone right now and say, hey, can you lend me $10,000? Not everyone will say yes to that. So when you feel there are people looking out for me, whether it's your cousins or your brothers or your friends, that sense of people are there to look out for me, that predicts how long you'll live. Another thing that predicts how long you'll live is social integration. As you go through your day, whether it's the Uber driver, whether it's a checkout person at the shopping mall, whether it's random people on the street, if you can have a small conversation, even people in the elevator, how are you doing, how's your day going? Is everything okay? These small moments of interaction, if you feel interconnected with the people around you, this determines how long you live. More than whether you smoke or not. More than whether you exercise or not. More than whether you do all these other habits that are supposed to be good or not. Our level of connection with each other and our sense of we can rely on each other, we can trust each other. This is huge in the quality of our lives. So it's so wonderful when Neil can call you and you don't know me, but you can just turn up because you trust Neil. Because this shows your social integration. This shows that you're there for each other. And this, I've noticed, maybe you've also noticed this. Back in India, we often don't pay so much attention, right? But over here, suddenly, it doesn't matter which part of the country you're from. If you're from India, if you have similar belief system, you can even believe in India, we have hundreds of gods. You can believe in different gods, different deities, but you come together, you celebrate Diwali together, you celebrate things together, you learn together, you look out for each other, you bring each other's kids to each other's homes. And you really, in fact, you notice this. People who come out of India are more interested in Indian culture and giving that kind of, sometimes kids in the US know more about Indian tradition and culture than kids in India. Because we just assume they'll just pick it up over there, right? So your attention to what's right, which is gratitude. Attention to what's happening now. This is the second kind of attention. Everything else. You know, my teacher gave me a different perspective. He said, most people imagine the past is unlimited, the future is unlimited, and the present is so small. It's a tiny little second or a moment, actually, less than a second. But let me give you a different perspective. The present is so big, the entire universe fits in it. And the present and the past is a bubble of thought. The future is a bubble of thought. You have never not been in the present. You only imagined you're not. So all the effort that, oh, I have to be present, I have to live in the present, this tiny little moment, that effort goes away. You can relax. You can never not be in the present. If I make you meditate for half an hour and I say, how long were you present? You say, no, Nithya, no, hardly 2 minutes. Oh, really? How do you know? Because when your mind was wandering also you knew. Some part of you knew my mind's wandering. So here the powerful statement, please repeat it after me. We'll say it carefully. My restlessness is as shallow as the waves. My well-being is as deep as the ocean. Let's say it again. My well-being is as deep as the ocean. My restlessness is as shallow as the waves. And this starts becoming your lived experience. That yes, there is restlessness, but this doesn't define me. It's just a small part of who I am. My well-being is as deep as the ocean. There's a tremendous intelligence here. Every cell of your body is intelligent. So you may have eaten breakfast, it's digesting by itself. Your heart is beating by itself. As I'm saying things, your brain is understanding, processing, perceiving, integrating, agreeing or disagreeing by itself. It's all happening by itself. This sense that I have to make it happen, this is the ghost in the machine. There's no such thing. Too much pulling and pushing doesn't help. I saw a lovely picture once of a bench on the side of the ocean with a simple statement. Let's say together, relax. Nothing is under control. And that's very true. What do you think is under control? It's all happening. It's all happening. 3 levels of maturity. First level is, I am the doer, I am the experiencer. Karta bhav, bhokta bhav. I do, I experience. Look, I have worked hard, look how much I've achieved. This is level 1. But then sometimes it'll happen, look, I've done so much, but I didn't get what I worked for. Well, that's not fair. It's because of them, you start blaming very quickly. You start to get very angry, very upset. So the first level of maturity is, I am the doer, I am the experiencer. I do and I experience. It's a very tumultuous level of life because you don't always get what you want, despite doing the best that you try. Level 2 is, let's say together, I am the witness. This is called drashta bhav. I am witnessing what is happening. I am watching. I am seeing thoughts come and go, feelings come and go, experiences come and go. I am literally witnessing myself giving this talk right now. Fascinating. This talk is just happening. You're all just here. Level 3 is very fascinating. Life is experiencing itself. So not even I am witnessing life. Life is witnessing life. Life is experiencing life. That's really fascinating. Somehow this birth happened. Somehow it was male or female. Somehow I went through a certain culture, certain society, certain conditioning. And here we are, and this is what's going on now. And it'll go on for whatever length of time it has to go on. Life is experiencing itself. Our happiest moments are when we have a sense that life is experiencing itself. It's called being in the flow. Now, whether that happens in sports, or you fall in love, or those moments of deep connection, or you actually lose yourself. It's actually losing yourself, isn't it? Deep down, we want to lose ourselves. We want to lose our false idea of ourselves. And that's when we feel most expanded, most ecstatic. And you can get that artificially through a variety of experiences, but ultimately only through wisdom does that become your foundation. In India, it's called Aadhar, your foundation. That is your foundation. So my well-being is as deep as the ocean, and my restlessness is as shallow as the waves. So in a way, what you've done is, you have humanized your divinity, and you have divinized your humanity. And now this becomes a new place to be. Everything else is a visitor. And now we express ourselves in our life, whatever gifts we have. We all have different talents and gifts. We express our gifts. We use them for the benefit of ourselves and others. But there's no strong sense of, I need to become this, I need to prove this, I need to achieve this. If something has to happen, one of my teachers used to say, let's say together, when effort is needed, effort manifests. We don't control the effort. Sometimes we are very effortful, sometimes we're not. When it's needed, it shows up. When it's not needed, it doesn't show up. So things are happening naturally. Things are happening the way they are. We'll do a small practice together. If any of you are very uncomfortable in the sun, you can sit in the shade. Otherwise, just do a short practice with me. Your eyes can be open or closed. Notice the different sounds you're hearing. Notice what you're feeling in your legs, in your back, belly and chest. Notice what you're feeling in both your hands and your entire face and head. For a moment, forget your name, forget your age, forget your gender, forget all the markers and roles. Just be here, be open. Life is experiencing life right now. And whatever the word love means to you, just decide to love this moment exactly the way it is. Even if it's a little bit uncomfortable, love it exactly the way it is. It doesn't even matter if you don't feel love. Just love it anyway. Love yourself, love this moment exactly the way it is. At the end of all our journeyings, we will come to the place we began and see it for the first time. What if this is the most perfect moment of your life? Whatever thought comes up, whatever feeling comes up, whatever memory comes up, let it arise and pass away by itself. You are the sky. All of this is weather. You are the timeless sky within which all of this arises and passes away. Sounds come and go. Sensations come and go. Feelings come and go. Thoughts, memories come and go. Emotions come and go. I am the sky. All of this is weather. My well-being is as deep as the ocean. It really is. My restlessness is as shallow as the waves. It really is. Get in touch with a certain freedom and ease and grace that's always available. And now it's also accessible. And no matter what's going on in the story of your life, no matter what upheavals are going on, There is a grace and freedom and ease that's right here, right now. My confidence is greater than your doubt. This is true for all of us. Accept with an open heart. Okay, Tamo. Accept with an open heart. Arigato. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. When unfavorable things happen, unpleasant things happen. Okitamo. Okitamo. I accept with an open heart. Bring it on. How wonderful. When favorable, pleasant things happen, arigato, arigato. Thank you, thank you, thank you. How wonderful. When good things happen to others, people we know in our life, they prosper, they do well. Anumodana, anumodana. I rejoice in your happiness. I rejoice in your happiness. Anumodana. When unpleasant, unfortunate things happen to those that we know, karuna bhav, compassion, compassion. Empathy and compassion. May you be free from your suffering. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Nothing can trouble us but our imagination. Nothing can trouble us but our imagination. Okitamo, acceptance. Arigato, thank you, gratitude. Anumodana, rejoicing in the happiness of others. Karuna, compassion. May all be free from suffering. Bodhi Chitta. May all experience freedom and ease that is their birthright. Bodhi Chitta. May all experience the freedom and ease that is their birthright. Born of wisdom. Born of correct understanding. What a beautiful way to live your life. Okitamo, acceptance. Arigato, thank you, thank you, thank you. Anumodana, rejoicing in the happiness and prosperity of others, the good qualities of others, the skills of others, abilities of others. It's also called mudita. And karuna brahma vihar, karuna, compassion. What can I do to reduce your suffering, alleviate your pain? And no matter what happens, we say, how wonderful, how wonderful. The world says, oh no, and we say, how wonderful. In this way, we are master storytellers. In this way, we are in alignment with the way things are. In this way, we are tapping into intuitive wisdom. We deeply trust ourselves. We trust our process. And we love in this very unique way. Love by being connected and spacious. Connected means being in touch with. Spacious means non-controlling, non-fixated. Connected yet spacious. I'm connected with you, and yet I'm not trying to change you, transform you, improve you. I give you space to breathe. We are in touch with ourselves, and yet we are not trying to change or control ourselves. We're very involved in the lives of our children, and yet we're not trying to control and mold our children. Beautiful balance. We do our best and we leave the rest. We do our best and we take a rest. We'll all take 3 deep breaths. Second is deeper. And third is extra deep. If you feel like rubbing your palms together, you can. Bring your hands over your eyes. Okay. Gently open your eyes. Let's say together, how wonderful. So the summary of what I've shared today is 3 words. Let's say together. Trust.
Trust.
Your process. Trust your process. We will go through many things in life. And often they'll not make sense until we look back. And then suddenly it seems to make sense. But usually when you're going through it, it doesn't make that much sense. It's a peculiar thing that we can know the past, but we can't know the future. And even the past is, if you ask your brother or sister what happened in childhood, they'll have a different version. So you wonder, do I even know the past? Sometimes your spouse will tell you, you don't even know what happened 5 minutes back. You've forgotten what happened, right? So what do we really know? So A lot of these teachings are about getting comfortable with uncertainty, getting comfortable with the unknown, leaning into the unknown. And there's something very alive in that. A lot of modern life is about trying to control the uncertainty, manage the uncertainty, right? And yet the harder we try, the more we fail. We can't really do it. It is uncertain, it is unknown. One of my teachers, quite a famous teacher actually, Ramana Maharishi, he would say that he would give this question to people: ask yourself, who am I? Who am I? And then he would clarify and say that who am I is not a question you need to answer. It's not a traditional question for which you answer. It's not designed to give you an answer. Who am I is a question designed to dissolve the questioner. So 3 places to focus your attention. Focus your attention on what's right, that's gratitude. Focus your attention on what is, and that's mindfulness. Focus your attention on who's focusing, and that's wisdom. Who is the one? Like many of you meditate here. So at some point you have to graduate beyond your meditation object, whether it's a mantra or your breath or your sensations or whatever you do. At some point you have to graduate from that into who is the meditator, who's meditating. Because you can fixate on this idea of being a meditator. Oh, I've meditated, been meditating from the age of 16. I've done so many courses, I've gone here and there and meditated. Just as easily you can fixate on, I'm not a meditator, I can't meditate, meditation's beyond me, I can't do these things. That's also a kind of fixation. These are all fixations. So loosen your grip on who you think you are and keep discovering yourself anew again and again and again. If you're really attentive, you'll notice you're different all the time. Every day you're a little different. You're not the same person you think you are. And our pain comes when we get disappointed in ourselves, when we thought we were like that, but we find we're not. Or we get very confused that, how can I never knew I had this quality also in me. Sometimes good qualities also emerge and we're not able to understand how that came out of you. So identity is a big part of our the suffering that we create for us. Strong ideas of who we are and who we are not. This creates a lot of baggage, a lot of pain in our life. Also for children. In any case, with children, we are very unsure. We're trying to learn from other people. So this is what I wanted to share today. And if anybody wants to comment on what I've shared or ask something, let's have some interaction. So it's open. And also share your name if you do that. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Any questions? It's not a formal. Go for it.
Hi Nithya, this is Purnima.
Hi Purnima.
The part where you're talking about you are nothing, you're something, and you're
Everything.
I followed up to nothing and something. I think I get that.
Yeah.
I don't know how the transition from nothing to everything happened.
Yeah. So this comes from, one of the places it comes from is a tradition in India called Kashmir Shaivism. Kashmir Shaivism says that the universe is a trinity. There are 3 things in this universe. There is that which knows, like for example right now, a part of me heard your question, a part of me received your question, a part of me is able to see you. Similarly, perhaps for you it's the other way around. You can hear me, you can see me. So we would call that the knower, that which knows. We assume I am the knower, but who is this I? Is the I in my eyes? Is the I in my head? Where is this I? It's actually got a big question mark. So in Kashmir Shaivism says Shiva is the knower. Shiva knows. Shiva knows everything that's happening in the universe. But Shiva has expanded so much that the more you expand, in some way you also contract. So when Shiva is expanded into becoming the sky and the buildings and the trees and the grass and all of us, then Shiva is also contracted. Shiva has forgotten who he is. Right? So I do not know the Shiva within myself. There is something in me that knows, the knowing element. That's called Shiva. And then the manifestation is called Shakti. The manifestation, the world, is called Shakti. So in this world there is the sky, there's the clouds, there's the all the movement that's happening down to the atomic level. That's the Prakriti, that's the creation. So there's Shiva, who is still, and Shakti, that's dancing. There's stillness and the dance. There's the father and there's the mother. And then from the father and mother emerges the child. And who is that child? You are the child. I am the child. So I'm a combination of Shiva and Shakti. There's a part of me that knows, and the part of me that is involved in the manifestation. I'm knowing also, and I'm part of the manifestation also. And that interface of the knower and the known is called the something. So this is, in fact, your question is very profound. What is that? How do you go from the nothing to the everything? It's so strange. Out of nothing, in a way, we've all come out of nothing. At some point, what were you? You were less than a cell. Where did that cell come from? From something you came, and now there's all of this, and again it goes back to nothing. So everything comes out of nothing, and it returns to nothing. So nothing, which is Shiva, everything, which is Prakriti or Shakti, and the interface. You and I are the interface. We are the interface of nothing and everything. We say, I'm in California, I'm here. But if you're very honest with yourself, wherever you go, you're in the middle of the whole universe. You cannot deny that. You're always in the middle of in your experience, you're in the middle of the whole universe. There's a beautiful story in India of a man who was a Shiva devotee his whole life. And he'd been praying to Lord Shiva. And he says, I've been praying to you for 30 years and you haven't manifested yourself. I'm giving up this prayer. So he said, I'm giving up. And that night he goes to sleep. And Shiva comes in his dream. The voice comes and says, I will reveal myself to you tomorrow. But how will I know you're there? He says, I will be the headless one. Be the headless one. So he looks looking around, who's headless? Everybody seems to have a head. Animals all seem to have a head. Then toward the evening, he's shocked to find, I can't see my own head. So right now, I can see all your heads. But the only one whose head I cannot see is this one. I can see hands. I can somewhat see a shoulder. But then above that, it's just a big gathering. This is fascinating. As far as I know, I'm the only creature in the known universe who doesn't have a head. Everyone else has a head. So what I'm saying is, you shouldn't deny that in some way you are actually very special. But then of course so is everyone else. But you cannot deny that you are actually very, very special in this world. When all of you move around, nothing happens. But when I move, the entire location moves. That is the quality of Shiva. So when you go deeper into this, there's a whole mechanism in how Shiva has forgotten. Shiva has imposed limitation on himself. Shiva has imposed the limitation of time, the limitation of space, the limitation of attachment, the limitation of skills, the limitation of knowledge, and the limitation of individuality, in order to go from a nothing into a something that is experiencing everything. So as we play with our perception, normally we're very caught up in our perception. I'm a woman, I'm so old, I'm this culture, I've studied this, I'm doing this is my job, this is my role. Then you have really trapped yourself into a very small bubble. And once in a while, when we come for gatherings like this, we can start poking those bubbles. Which is why it's important to once in a while come to a different gathering where people see you differently, you see yourself differently. And then your identity starts to expand. And when that happens, you are more fluid as you go from identity to identity. You're not so caught up in just being this. So that's the reason we explore these kinds of things. And some of you may find this kind of a little hard to understand, but any new thing is a little hard to understand. But as you go along, you'll start seeing there's a great power in this way of thinking. In any moment, there is a knowing, and there is a knower. And if you ask yourself, who is the knower, what is the knowing, who am I in all of this? You'll find instant freedom and instant ease. Because we imagine I'm here, and then this is my world, I am acting on my world, then we are in illusion. And then we are always in confusion. But there is an unknown knower, and there is an uncontrollable knowing happening. And right there is freedom and ease. And this is a brief moment where Shiva unmasks himself. Prakriti reveals herself. And we realize we are the child of this God and Goddess, this consciousness and energy. We are a child of that. And there can be a little moment of self-acceptance that for some reason I am made the way I am. It is the way it is. I am the way I am. Tattvam asi. I am that. Yeah, please go ahead.
Nithya, Amit. So when you spoke about divinity and humanity, I think that was very complex. Maybe explain that slightly slower and more color, because I think it went over my head completely.
Some of my teachers who I really admired, what was really beautiful about them was that they were not projecting themselves to be better than us, greater than us. In fact, one quality you find in people who are truly self-actualized, self-realized, they're very ordinary. They're not trying to show how much they know, how much they've achieved. And that's their humanity. One of my friends used to say, while it is your divinity that attracts them, it is your humanity that makes it accessible. So while they may have amazing qualities, if they can sometimes be forgetful, if they can sometimes be a little confused, if they can sometimes even be a little irritable, say, whoa, they're like us. It's just like me, you know, I also get like that. And so suddenly you feel that, okay, something like that could be attainable even to me. So in a way, we've humanized the divinity. And to divinize the humanity, there's a lovely story of this Sufi who was praying to God once, and he said, you know, God, I'm very confused what to give you. Because anything I give you, you've only created. If I give you beautiful flowers, actually you made the flowers, not me. If I make a place of worship for you, you've made those stones, you've made that entire apparatus. So what can I give you? I don't know what to give you, because you only created everything. So he hears a voice in his head that says, son, you're right. It's quite funny, you're giving me things that I've only created. But there's something I don't have. Really? You don't have? What is it you don't have? So God says, where I am, there is no agitation. There's no restlessness. There's no confusion. There's no anxiety. There's no fear. There's no arrogance. Where I am, there's no uncertainty. There's no fear. There's no sadness. Can you give me that? He says, God, I've got lots of that. So please give me. So from then on, whenever he feels sad, agitated, angry, upset, he says, oh, God wants a break from being so timeless, so all-knowing. God wants a break. Like we said, Shiva imposes limitation on himself. So in this way of thinking, you divinize. So in India, for example, if you notice, if you read the scriptures, you'll find these gods are not so, they get arrogant, they get jealous, they're conceited, they fight with each other. You know, and if you look at the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, the Purana, they're full of these gods actually being constantly full of all human qualities. I think that's quite beautiful, actually. It shows us that our humanity also, in a way, can be divinized. So you humanize the divinity and you divinize the humanity. And any great tradition does that. If you don't do that, you create a barrier. You say, we are here and we need to get there somehow. And it's almost impossible, right? And so unless you follow a very strong path of commandments and this and that, and you've got to be this perfect human being. And deep inside, you know you're not. Because as you know, the more you try to project something, the less of that you are. The more strength you project, the more vulnerability you're hiding. The more vulnerable you can be, the stronger. It takes great strength to be vulnerable. It's not easy to be vulnerable. So it's the opposite of what you expect. I'm sure you've seen the symbol of the Tao. The Tao is this white drop circulating around the white drop. The white and the black drop circulating. And then there's a dot within that. So the more you go into the black, then the white also emerges. The more you go into the white, the black also emerges. And they keep spinning. So it's something like that. It's the strange thing is the more I accept my humanity, I start awakening my divinity. And the more I see your divinity, in your humanity, I look past that, I see your divinity. That also starts emerging. What I focus on expands. The fool who persists in his folly shall become wise. What a strange thing. The fool who persists in his folly shall become wise. So which is why I say trust your process. And one big mistake we make, I feel, is we try to copy other people's path. I've done that for a lot of my life. Oh, I should do this, I should do that. But then little by little you realize you're not here to copy anybody. You're here to express the way life wants to express itself through you. And that means embracing and accepting certain parts of yourself. I am this way for some reason. For my life, an example, I would read a lot of books. Even as a monk, I would read a lot of books. And a part of me would feel guilty. I'm a monk, I should be meditating all the time. I should be meditating. I shouldn't be reading so many books. This is only mental, intellectual knowledge. And one day I asked my teacher that, you were mentioning this yesterday, top both of us, that how come these villagers who come to practice, in a few days, in a few weeks, they achieve all kinds of amazing things. They're having all kinds of deep meditative states. I've been here for so long, I'm not achieving any of that. What's going on here? So he said, they have small houses to clean. They have small houses to clean. When a villager comes, they haven't been overloaded with all kinds of concepts, all kinds of ideas. So they clean up their small house quite quickly. So you've got a big house to clean. And then he said, but they can accommodate only a few. You'll be able to accommodate a lot more. So it took me a lot longer to clean my house. It's still getting cleaned. But I can accommodate a lot more. That villager, while he's very deep and profound, cannot accommodate, we cannot often relate to his knowledge and wisdom. We can't communicate it sometimes. So in other words, I have to trust my process. My process involved, for example, being drawn to many ideas, many practices, many books. That was my process. And then I have to accept and embrace that. For example, this is something that often we talk about, that take up one thing and go deep into it. Take up one thing and go deep into it. But I found I could never take up one thing and go deep. I was quite eclectic. I take up a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. And nowadays they have a nice word for it, multi-potentialite. But back then I just felt I'm a jack of all, like what the hell, I'm not going deep into anything. So it involved me accepting that I am a generalist. I am someone who's interested in many things. I'm not one of the people who only takes one thing and goes super deep into it. And the more I accept that, then that also becomes like a superpower. Nowadays in India, if you know, we have a shortage of general practitioners, GPs. We have too many specialists. You need general practitioners also. In a medical system, you need some people who know a little bit of everything. If you only know your discipline too deeply, you can't help the average patient. So we also need GPs. So if I'm made a certain way, then there is a reason for that. So it is a very powerful moment of our life when we realize that it's okay to be the way I am. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I interviewed someone recently on my Zoom channel, and he talked about how his breakthrough came. There's a famous movie some of you have seen. It's called The Secret. Many years back it came out. And there's a teacher called Bob Proctor in that. And he was talking about, he was pulling his skin and saying, I love myself. I really love myself. I just love myself. And he saw that movie and he said, I can't say that about myself. I can't pull my skin and say I love myself. I don't feel that way about myself. And then he smiled on the interview and said, but today I can't say that about myself. I really love myself. I really accept myself. I really adore myself. I love my own company. What would it take for us to be that comfortable in our own skin? It would require you to humanize your divinity and to divinize your humanity. Break this barrier of I need to be something else than what I am. Just wait for 1 second.
Bigger
Emergency.
Get your question. Go for it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi Nithya, my name is Ragini.
Ragini.
Thank you, Neil, for inviting me. I loved the conversation. It's a really amazing talk. And all the concepts like acceptance, gratitude, you are the conscious creator, you create your reality. All of those things really resonate with me. I am very passionate about personal growth. So, and I've realized that one topic that I'd like to learn a little bit from you, here if you can share something, forgiveness.
Forgiveness, yes.
Because many times I have felt that forgiveness is something that really is a block. If not able to forgive people and situations, it doesn't help us. It creates more problem for the future. Right?
True.
And so I have learned that doing that really has helped me and other people I see.
Yeah.
So what is your take on that, and what is the easy way to do it, or maybe how can we do it? Just whatever.
Yeah,
it is.
beautiful. If it was so easy, we would all have done it. See, first of all, notice we talked about this right at the beginning, that it's not the things that are happening to us, it's our thoughts about the things that are happening to us. It's not what someone did, it's your thoughts about what they did. We add a layer of, that means they are like this, that means they think this about me. That you add a layer, that's what you have to notice about yourself in anything that's happening. Most of us are just trying to live our lives and get along as comfortably as we can, And once in a while we will do things that don't seem very fair to each other. The first thing to notice is that they have done whatever they've said and done and they've moved on. And here we are in this pool, we are in the mess over here. If we are so innocent, then why are we suffering? And we are suffering because we are bringing that up again and again and again and again. So first thing you realize is I'm not forgiving for them. I'm forgiving for me. Because I'm hurting myself every time I think about it in this particular way. So I would say start with a sentence like this. And let's all say this together. I forgive myself for my inability to forgive. So what is the current reality? I'm not able to forgive. All right. So I forgive myself for my inability to forgive. I accept my inability to accept this current situation. That creates a bit of an opening. It's like a 1% of acceptance. It's like a 1% of forgiveness. At least I forgive my inability to forgive right now. It's too much. I can't tolerate this. It's too much. It's beyond my capacity. And then you realize moment by moment, they're not tormenting you, you're only tormenting yourself. If I'm so innocent, why am I getting so tormented? Because I'm bringing that up in my mind again and again and again and again and again. I use a few simple tools that I find very effective. One of them is called tapping, or EFT. You tap certain points on your face. It's quite amazing, just tapping these points. Google tapping or look up EFT, emotional freedom techniques. It's so simple that tapping, there's something about the body being gently tapped as you're thinking of that incident. It's quite amazing. The intensity just comes down. There's another powerful tool I learned. It's called self-havening. So you do something as simple as lightly touching your palms. And after a while, lightly touching your own shoulders. And after a while, lightly touching your own face. And these are all things which create a sense of safety within you. Like even for somebody else, holding their hand, or somebody else is upset, we naturally can touch their shoulders. Come on, relax, right? Or when someone you loved lightly touches your face, you feel very safe. It's physiologically creating safety within you. So mentally, emotionally, you're feeling very unsafe. But as you touch your face, touch your hands, touch your body. So they found that these physical act of tapping or physical act of touching, the reason you're not able to forgive is because the memory is not stored in the normal way. It's stored in a different way. It's stored in your amygdala. Why is it stored like this? Your brain wants you to remember, in future, never let this happen again. It's not a normal memory anymore. It's a traumatic memory. Why? For example, you had a car accident, right? You're reasonably okay, but now you feel nervous every time you get into the car. Why? Your brain is saying, be careful. That thing led to a very close call. So the reason it's so difficult to forgive is because the memory is not stored in a normal way. It's stored in a different way. It's stored in your amygdala, the fight and flight center of your brain. So methods like the one that I'm telling you can be very helpful and very powerful. In fact, the most powerful way of healing these days is no longer talk therapy. It's somatic therapy. What is somatic therapy? They will briefly bring up the topic. It'll lead to all kinds of things happening. Your heart will start beating. Your face will get red. Your hands will start shaking. So now start talking about it. Get into the body. Feel the feeling in your hands. Feel the feeling in your heart. And little by little, it'll calm down. Or you can use tools like I'm telling you. There are also kind of somatic tools. So these are some ways in which you can reduce the impact of this, and you can definitely come out of this. This is being done on nationwide scale. In Rwanda, where there was a genocide, there were thousands and thousands of people that were massacred. And these people were the people who did it were put into prison. And after a few years, the Prime Minister said that, listen, our country is not so rich that we can handle putting such a large population in prison. We just can't manage this. We have to have a reconciliation. So he began a national process of reconciliation. And by training the families and training the inmates, those who agreed to ask for forgiveness were set free. They came to the mother whose kids had been massacred, whose husband had been massacred, and they asked for forgiveness. And the mother said, what forgiveness? You've ruined my family. I don't have a house to live. So he comes back a few days later, and he and his friends helped rebuild the house. And it was by The Guardian, I think, or New York Times, The Guardian, one of the two. Portraits of forgiveness, unbelievable photos of a lady standing close or sometimes even holding the hand of the man who massacred her family. This happened on a nationwide scale. If this can happen, these are not saints, these are ordinary people. If they can bring it within themselves to forgive someone who even killed their family, then why are we arguing over small things? What happened over property? What happened over money? What happened with you took my parking? In India, this happens a lot. You took my parking. So people are fighting over this with neighbors. So we have to dig deep inside ourselves to find that. And we're not doing anybody else a favor. Right? We are learning to, so like I say, keep the lesson, release the pain. Keep the lesson. The pain is not helping you. Keep the lesson, you become wiser as a result. But keeping the trauma is not helping you by any means. The greatest gift you give is to yourself by forgiving. And there are ways to do it. And especially if it's a very deep trauma, then you might need some help and support. Someone who can walk you through that process. Because it'll involve revisiting and releasing some of the trauma associated with that. But there's definitely hope, and there's definitely light on the other side. At the deepest level, no one has ever done anything to you. You're doing everything to yourself, because there's only one consciousness. That's absolutely stunning. You're like, oh my God, that's just me. That's just my left hand doing something to the right hand. And that's the moment, truly, even the concept of forgiveness is no longer valid. Because what will you say when you realize it's your left hand doing it to the right hand? What can you say anymore? My teacher called it the driverless bus. You're complaining about this bus. that the scenery is not good, the road he's taking is not good, there's so much traffic, the good parts he's speeding through, the bad parts he's slowing down. And you get up and go and give a piece of your mind. And like in California, once in a while, there's no driver in this bus. It's a driverless bus. If it's a driverless bus, what are we getting so upset about? So we imagine people are maliciously doing stuff, but they're also bound by their own conditioning. They're also bound by their own fears and traumas. Hurt people hurt people. So what are we getting so upset about? It's an automatic process that's happening. So when you see it like that, even the requirement of all of these tools and all reduces. So the level of your wisdom will determine how many tools you need. Yeah. Ramana Maharshi was sitting, if you know Ramana Maharshi, great saint of India, he, Ramanath also here today, he never went more than 3 or 4 miles from the base of this mountain, Arunachala. So one day he went for a walk and he was sitting on a boulder. And down there was a mango orchard. And thieves had come and they were plucking mangoes. And mangoes, as you know, are expensive in India. And they were about to run away when one person noticed, shit, he saw us. That old man saw us. So the leader says quite loudly to his fellow, go catch him, blind him. Blind him, so he can't identify us. So the guy goes chasing. Ramana Maharshi doesn't move, he keeps sitting there. Because Ramana Maharshi knew what has to happen will happen in this world. He never got up and ran, he just sat there. And the man comes close to him, Ramana Maharshi keeps remaining, sitting there, gazing in the distance. The guy goes back and says, he's already blind. Now that's the level of trust your process. You trust. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. What are you going to get away from? If it's in your fate, you're going to get it. Right? This is a whole other level of trusting. What needs to happen will happen. So we don't fluctuate and worry so much about it. Bring it on. Bring it on. This becomes your only prayer. Bring it on. No resistance. When there's nothing to defend, nothing can offend. Anybody else wants to share something or ask something?
Or follow, can I ask a Atrangi question?
Yeah, please. What is it?
Atrangi question.
Atrangi क्या होता है?
मतलब it's a tangential.
Tangential, why not?
So, there is this confusion, and my wife and I argue about this quite a bit. We talk about forgiveness, being a better human being. But in our culture, Krishna tells Arjun that it is your duty sometimes to defend and take revenge for what has been done wrong to you.
Yeah.
So how do you, and obviously we're not in Mahabharata, but practically, what is the line between forgiveness and defending for what's right, and what is your duty to defend something?
Beautiful.
Sorry, it's a little bit off topic, but I think...
No, it's a beautiful question. What I would say is that the main difference between karma and dharma is when you think you are the doer, it's always karma. But when it's happening through you, then it's dharma. So it has to do with level of consciousness. Like I said, level of maturity. I am the doer, I am the experiencer, bhokta bhav, karta bhav. I am the witness, drashta bhav. It's happening. Keval darshan, things are happening. Krishna was in a state of keval darshan, things that is happening. And he's guiding the others, Arjuna and others. Start living from, don't feel that you are the doer. If you are the doer, then you're going to create all kinds of karma. He says in the Gita, I've already killed all these people. You think you're going to kill them? I've already killed them before, and they're like dead people walking around. You just have to do what has to be done. It has to come through you. So he's breaking the sense that you are the doer, right? So when there is that sense of unrighteousness or whatever, I would say, come to a place deep within you where it is just a happening. These thoughts are happening, these words are happening. There is no karma created. If I gave this talk, then when you praise me, I'll be elated. And when you criticize me, I'll be squished. But if the talk just happened, then you praise me, good for you, you're feeling good about something. If you didn't like it, fantastic, it rattled you up. That will also teach you something, right? There's no sense of I did anything. So I think it's more about you coming to that place where it is coming through you. Become a zero. Whatever way you do that. Karma yoga, I'm just a madhyam, I'm just doing stuff. I'm not the doer. Dhyana yoga, where you feel, okay, who's the one who's here? Jnana yoga, you study and say, what am I really? I'm nothing over here. Come to a zero. When you become a zero, then life flows through you. Infinite potentials can start manifesting through you. And that's the difference between karma and dharma. It's a sense of doership. As long as you're the doer, even the best action, you can build a whole big hospital, but you've only made your ego stronger. What a great guy I am, I built a big hospital, right? My teacher used to say, you can stand outside a hospital somebody else has built and be filled with anumodana. How wonderful. So many people are getting healed here. So many people are getting taken care of over here. They have such good treatment options for the poor people. You will make better karma than the person who's built that entire hospital. Because you're operating from a different mind space. It's not what you do, it's why you do it. Beautiful story of Guru Nanak. Guru Nanak went to a village. They treated him with a lot of love and care and respect. On his way out, he turned back and he said aloud, his disciple was next to him, "May a great flood come to this village." The disciple is shocked. What is he saying? They took such good care of him. What is he saying? He goes to another village. They ignore him. They mistreat him. They hardly give him anything to eat. They treat him so badly. And as he emerges, he says, "May no misfortune ever fall on this village." And his disciple can't control himself. What are you doing? Such a good village, you curse them. Such a bad village, and you're blessing them. What is this about? He said that village, first village, every single person is a powerful being, filled with so many good qualities. The world needs more such people. Let a great flood come, let them scatter throughout the world. Wherever they go, it'll be a point of light. Happened to the Tibetans. When the Chinese invaded, they went all over, and they've set up beautiful centers where people are benefiting. And the other village, this is a pit of darkness. They should never get out of this pit of darkness. Once they emerge, it's going to create havoc all over the world. They should remain in that pit of darkness. Let no calamity ever befall this village. Let them remain in their little pit of darkness. It's a completely different way of thinking. So we cannot judge. If you judge at the surface level, Guru Nanak is being very unfair. But at the deepest level, there's tremendous wisdom in what he's doing. So sometimes, as parents, as teachers, as leaders, we have to take action that may seem very unfair, very not right. But if you're coming from a place of deep understanding, it is a dharmic action. Right? Sometimes letting go of someone from the job is the best thing you can do for them. Let them go and find something else that suits their talents, their abilities, their things. Just giving them safety and security of a job is not always the best thing. So it's all right. As we know, some of the biggest organizations, I think Google went to Yahoo and they said, okay, keep working on your school project. And then eventually Google went far ahead of Yahoo, right? So this happens, these things happen. So let us operate from that place of openness, which is why any kind of practice you do, whether it's walking in nature, whether it's sitting quietly, whether it's meditating, try to come to a place where you go beyond this chattery mind for a little bit. Or you allow the chattery mind to just be the chattery mind. You'll start tapping into this super intelligence. Your body is a super intelligence. This life is a super intelligence. This world is a super intelligence. You don't have to break your head figuring it out. You align yourself with that super intelligence, things start falling in place. Everything happens the way it's meant to happen. And these doubts and all just start vanishing. There's no need to convince anyone. Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Aditi. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful listening to you. So, you were talking about I'm not trying to copy your journey, but how you went. It was easy for you to become a monk because, you were assuming you were a single person. But for some of us in samsara with children, there is this, delicate balance. I want to be a nun, but then what will happen to my children, my spouse? So, how do we find answers to that? What do we rely and trust on between dharma and karma?
Yeah, so one would say that nothing stops you for a short while, maybe one day in a week, or a few days in a month, or even a month in the year, to have a different style of life. You don't have to become a full-on nun or anything. What stops you from a few hours in a week to set aside that this is my time to meditate, introspect, whatever? The thing is, we imagine sometimes if I change my lifestyle, everything will change. When you go there, you're again going to find people with egos. There is some envy, there's ego. You take your world with you wherever you go. It's not such an idealistic place. It's just a different opportunity. Monks have a slightly better opportunity, that's all. But not everyone makes use of the opportunity. Just because you're put in, for example, you're in the Bay Area, there are so many opportunities here. How many of them are we making use of? We may have a gym at every corner, a swimming pool at every corner, you can learn musical instruments everywhere, but are we making use of the opportunity? So just because you become a monk or a nun, it's just an opportunity. You have access to teachers, teachings, a good environment to practice, but your inner hindrances will be there also. That doesn't change. So I would say there is no mistake. Byron Katie, in the beginning, she'd never heard the word namaste. So when people would come to her door, ring the doorbell and say namaste, she would hear, say with me, no mistake. No mistake, come on in. So, no mistake, no mistake, no mistake. So what a wonderful definition of namaste. No mistake, no mistake. There's no mistake that you are here, that you have kids who are that old, that you're in this particular set of circumstances, responsibilities, there is no mistake. I was in Bali and I asked this teacher there, what is the lesson of Balinese culture? He said it very beautifully. In his broken English, he said, let's say together, love what you do. No, he said it this way, do what you love and you will love what you do. Oh, he said do with love. So do with love, right? So do with love and you will love what you do. So whatever you're doing, bring love into that. And if truly it's your destiny to become a nun or live in a monastery, then that'll show up at the right time. But there's no mistake. Don't assume that, I have to make a big change. It doesn't necessarily have to be like that. It can happen in a very graceful, easeful manner. And find the nunnery here, find the monastery here in your life. Find that. I recommend books by my teacher, Ajahn Brahm. In fact, your whole family will enjoy it. There's a lovely book called Who Ordered This Truckload of Dung? It's a book of stories. Get that book, Who Ordered This Truckload of Dung? And just read 1 or 2 stories every day with your family. You'll enjoy those stories. And you'll find that right where we are, and monks and nuns also have very, funny lives in some way. They're also up to their own mischief. So they're also doing their own thing. So wherever we are, we make the most of that circumstance. And we don't wait for some ideal time in our life to practice these things. Good. Have you all become barbecued people? Yeah, go ahead.
Nithya, hi, I'm
Hi.
Reshma.
Reshma.
I'm a complete stranger. This is the first time I'm hearing you,
Yeah.
but it's beautiful. So thank you for sharing. My cousin in India follows you, and she literally said, "Didi, there is Nithya coming to near your house, please, for whatever, right?" And she
Nice.
sent me multiple reminders. That's how I reached out to Neil. You've been talking about trust your process, right? And you've been talking about no mistakes. I want to ask you, many times we come to decisions, right? We know that we're doing exactly what we're meant to do, but there are decision points which
Yeah.
could take your life in 2 different directions. And how do you then, you're seeing that the choices you make, they're going to lead you through 2 different paths.
Very
How do
nice.
you know, or can you talk more about
Sure.
what would be that right path?
What I realized in my life is that decisions actually make themselves. We imagine we make decisions, but if you look very, very carefully, like the clothes you're wearing today, did you actually decide, or they just happened to be there when you picked them up? And the weather decided, and many, many other things decided. Oh, today I have to also go after this to another gathering. Maybe these clothes are appropriate. So decisions actually make themselves. What you can do to facilitate it a little bit is you ask yourself, what are the main values by which you want to live this life? So for example, if I say, for me it's freedom, it's ease, it's joy, it's playfulness, it's inquiry, these are some of my values, then I would say, okay, what's it like to have a small taste of freedom right now, ease right now, joy right now, playfulness right now, inquiry right now. And I have put myself into a certain state of being. In this state of being, chances are I'll make the best decision. If I'm in fear, uncertainty, worry, overthinking, chances I'm going to make the bad decision. So at the end of your life, what state of being do you want to be in? Practice that now, right? At the end of the decision, what state of being do you want to be in? Practice that now. Instead of doing things for happiness, suppose you do them from happiness. Instead of doing things for joy, suppose you do them from joy. Instead of doing things for ease, suppose you do them from ease. So whatever you want at the end, begin with that. There's a famous quote attributed to Ratan Tata, which he said, I never said it, but the quote goes like this: I don't make right decisions. I make decisions, then I make them right. You can never know if it's the right decision or not. But at a certain point, let the decision happen. Like at some point I decided, I actually thought about it when I was 17 years old, but it took me until the age of 23 to actually, I'm becoming a monk. It took me like many years, right? But at some point it was very clear, it's time to be a monk. And then nothing could stop me. It was just so clear. It was crystal clear for me. And I became a monk. And then at a certain point, I began thinking, I don't think I want to be a monk for life. I want to be a monk. This has been good for this period, but now I want to do it in a different way. And I was thinking, but then 2008, early morning, 2nd of January or something, a dream comes, it's done. This monk phase is now over. It's done. The decision made itself. If I'm very honest in my life, decisions make themselves. All I can do is put myself in the optimal state of being. as aligned, as clear, as open, whatever values that you believe in, whatever you're trying to achieve at the end of that, start with that. And chances are it'll be the right decision. If it's not, you make it right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good, very nice. Come, we can step inside for a while. Right? Let's all say, how wonderful.
How wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.